good day. And welcome to the Deview, where there's a 0% chance of hearing that something is good, there's a 0% chance of hearing that something is bad, and there's a 75% chance of spontaneous introspection. Here's the thing about men. Men are scary. Men are dangerous. Think back to some of the foulest atrocities that have been committed in human history, and almost every single one of them can be traced back at its foundation to a man. Reflecting on the great existential blight that my kind represent often has me wishing I could leave my meaty avatar behind like the steam floats away from a kettle and just be anything else. A tree, a sea cucumber, or even a big, silly snake. Oh hey, there's a game for that. In video games, I am constantly pining for something different. Something that doesn't have guns, white American protagonists, or sleeper holds. And while putting this game's terrain in sleeper holds is basically how you progress through 60% of it, 2 out of 3 will do for now. Snake Pass is one of the most different games I have ever played. Incredibly innovative, incredibly creative. If you're otherwise unfamiliar with this game, then you've likely surmised through the incredible miracle of basic observation that this is a game where you play as a snake. More than that, it's a 3D platformer where you play as a snake. Before I really go into non-specific detail on this game, let me recount a little bit of relevant literary history that I previously discussed in this video from 2019, one that I suspect a lot of my newer viewers haven't seen. This might take a bit, but I know how much you guys love long-form content. I'm sure you won't complain about something that's bigger in scale. Because he's a big snake. So it's France in the 1960s. A Justice League of mathematicians and writing nerds congregate at the top of the Eiffel Tower to discuss how they can enhance their nerd powers. To this end, they name themselves Oulipo and spearhead a movement of art that seeks to showcase the power that limitations and restrictions can have on your creativity. They cast aside the pursuit of originality, or just letting your imagination run wild and doing whatever the hell you can that you think is different, in favour of seeing how strict rules can impact their work. Innovation, as it were. They pioneered lots of wacky little writing constraints like a ropolism or snowball poem, which is a poem in which each line is a single word, but each successive word has to be 1 letter longer. The N+7 constraint had writers replacing every noun in a text with the 7th noun after it in a dictionary, and then there's my favourite, lipograms. A lipogram is a piece of writing that chooses to exclude 1 letter from it entirely, often a vowel for extra challenge factor. Fun fact, I actually wrote a lipogrammatic poem for a poetry module during my university course. One of Oulipo's most prominent members, a man named George Perec, wrote an entire lipogrammatic novel called Avoid, which does not use the letter E once. The absence of the letter is one of the book's core themes. This mantra of using constraints to squeeze creativity out of your work is still alive today in some of the world's shrewdest creators. I mean, the phrase, "the enemy of art is the absence of limitations," may ring a bell. This probably won't come as a surprise to you, but the Deview is heavily inspired by what I learned about Oulipo at university. Snake Pass is a shining, slithering example of the mentality these French nerds had towards their art. Look at the amount of other 3D platformers that completely lose themselves in their ideas. They go wild and do whatever they can in the name of originality, and as a result, lose focus. They become less about platforming and more about gimmicks. Snake Pass is a 3D platformer where you can't even jump. Your protagonist does not have feet. Now, Am I suggesting that 2017's Snake Pass is in fact a piece of French Oulipan literary art? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Take everything I say very seriously. By stripping itself of these core tenets of other 3D platformers that lose themselves in all their bells and whistles, Snake Pass is laser focused. It does exactly what you think it does. This is a game about traversing levels as a snake. Instead of jumping to and from platforms, you use your own length to your advantage. You slam your head into surfaces and then begin the arduous process of bringing the rest of your long body the rest of the way up. And by this logic, your length is also often your biggest weakness. This is the gameplay loop. This is how you move between platforms in Snake Pass. Imagine ring toss as a video game, only the ring is your own head, and the thing you're tossing it at is a giant fucking rock. As Snake Pass progresses, it doesn't kit out its protagonist with a whole bunch of crazy upgrades and powers to help compensate for levels that would have been impossible without them, because there's still so much more to explore with what you already have. Moving platforms come into the equation, levers that you'll need to wrap yourself around just to pull. In the final world, wind mechanics get involved, great googly moogly. You'll start needing to use your bird companion to lift your tail up and even your weight out so you aren't dragged down into the abyss by the sheer enormity of your own giant dump truck arse. When platforms start moving, Snake Pass becomes hang in there baby the game. You'll want to use the left trigger to tighten your grip, keeping you safely coiled around whatever surface you've draped yourself over, but obviously this will only work if you've managed to keep your body weight evenly distributed. Snake Pass's controls are one of the most frequently maligned things about the game. People complain about them being unintuitive, awkward and unwieldy, to which my response is, yeah, you're a giant fucking snake. It shouldn't feel intuitive or natural to play. If you woke up tomorrow as Batman, you wouldn't instinctively know how to use all his shit, would you? You wouldn't just start flying around the city like it was no problem, just slinging batarangs at your hands without a second thought. I certainly wouldn't, and I'm definitely not Batman. Promise. Okay, it's me, I'm Batman. The controls being unwieldy are the point. That's the challenge. The challenge of the game is being a snake. If that wasn't clear enough, you are slow as balls in this game when you move forward in a straight line. If you want to traverse these levels with any kind of reasonable speed, you actually need to slither back and forth, basically zigzagging upwards on your directional stick. This is a game that cares about really making you feel like Batman, like a snake, fuck. So let me give you a quick rundown of the controls so you can kind of quantify it and get an idea of how this all works. The action button, X or A on a standard controller, raises Noodle's head. Oh, sorry, the snake is called Noodle, that's canonical, and the bird is called Doodle. I'm not making that up, seriously, it's in the game. The top face button, triangle, on a PlayStation controller, makes Doodle lift Noodle's tail up like I previously mentioned. The right trigger is your move button. Noodle will start moving whichever direction he's facing when you push this button. The analog stick is used for moving Noodle's head around. This is helpful for guiding movement, as obviously Noodle's always going to move the direction he's looking. The right stick controls the camera, and finally the left trigger lets you tighten your grip, as I mentioned earlier. So yeah, it's weird and unconventional, but that's obviously intentional. A game has never had you control a character like this before, and I struggle to see many other ways that the controls could be mapped out that wouldn't either totally trivialize the game or hamper its core premise. Not liking it is fine, but you have to understand intention here. If you want to talk about actually unintuitive things, we've got to talk about Strudel. Sorry, Strudel's the name I've given to the game's invisible cameraman. You know, Noodle, Doodle, Strudel, it rhymes. I thought it was cute. Anyway, Strudel fucking hates you. Strudel knows that most of your fingers are going to be occupied by gripping and head raising and slithering around all these complicated structures, and that manually operating a camera at the same time is nearly impossible. On the rare occasion that he can be bothered to get off his ass without being told to, he conveniently gets stuck behind the game's various terrain and textures and completely obscures your vision. If you do have the radioactive mutant freak dexterity to manually guide Strudel, he conveniently gets stuck behind the game's various terrain and textures and completely obscures your vision. Look, now he's getting fucking blocked behind something else as well. Oh. It's the Deview word of the day. The Deview word of the day is loquacious. Loquacious meaning to excessively talk, to talk loquaciously. I don't bring this up for any particular reason. It's just a happy little accident. It's apparently derived from Latin in some way, comes from sometime around the 17th century, but I can't really find more in it than that, which works for me, because I didn't want things to get loquacious now, did I? Snake Pass was developed by a seemingly small team at Sumo Digital. I say seemingly based on the game's small size of only 15 levels, many of which reuse the exact same assets even across different worlds. The somewhat bare bones menus and loading screens and other presentation elements, and the fact that across one song for each of the game's worlds, one song for the level select screen and one song for the title screen, Snake Pass's entire OST appears to be made up of 6 songs. If you look up Snake Pass's OST on YouTube, you can see as much, as the top result is a 6-song playlist posted by our good friend, Violent Condom. Thank you, Violent Condom. Yet, small does not necessarily mean low in quality. Despite its sparsity of presentational stuff, what is there is made to be more than the sum of its parts through a splash of colour and real personality. Level select screens and menus are simple but vibrant, and when you get into the levels themselves you'll find your beady little eyes have been exposed to a deluge of radiant jungle aesthetics. Frankly, the dreariest thing you'll visibly see in Snake Pass is Noodle himself. He's literally just a snake. I mean, give him a silly hat or a fucking tattoo or something, I don't know. Look at the keystones, Snake Pass's main collectible. A perfect example of the team's ingenuity in design. These keystones let off a tall light that shines like a beacon that can be seen throughout anywhere in the level, making Snake Pass's otherwise occasionally non-linear level design much more convenient to work your way through. Then you get close to them. Look at that shine. So sparkly, so glossy. God. Fun fact, when you're really hungry, this is what Skittles look like. Snake Pass, in almost every way, feels like a successor or a tribute to the kinds of games that Rare would make back in the day. This seems like a reasonably apt comparison at first when you consider that Sumo Digital are also a UK-based company, and then you realise that that soundtrack I talked about earlier was helmed by Jungle Jazz Jesus himself, David Wise. Each world in Snake Pass may only have one song, but all 4 of these songs very quickly found themselves a cozy place in my private VG Chill music playlist on YouTube. VG stands for video game, chill meaning that I like to relax to it. And so it only seems fitting to debut my new segment, David Wise's music makes me... David Wise's music makes me want to strip naked, dress like a sunflower, bury myself in the earth and sleep there overnight, watching the sun set and then rise again over an ocean of soil. David Wise's music makes me want to stand at the edge of a tall, dusty canyon, feel the breeze rolling through my hair, and take a piss off the side of it, but in a way that's like respectful to nature. David Wise's music makes me want to befriend a small woodland critter, watch as it struggles to acclimate to the urban world encroaching on its habitat, and make a stand against the corporate overlords who continually order humanity's unnecessary expansion, earning the respect of all the creatures that live nearby in doing so. That's what David Wise's music makes me want to do. Snake Pass also has somewhat of a bare bones story. By which I mean, at the end of every world, a weird shape talks to you and gives you an iPhone, and at the end of the second world you get a very brief cutscene showing a menacing looking crow watching on. This crow turns out to be a massive idiot head. So as you can see, there's not really a lot to Snake Pass aside from its core gameplay. In games with small budgets and small teams, I think that's the way it should be. Why waste your limited resources on stuff that isn't the gameplay? It's a shame to me that so many people, in my mind, struggle to see Snake Pass for what it is. It's a game that didn't release at full price. It's a game that isn't trying to be the next Grand Theft Auto. It's an idea a new idea, a unique idea. Surface level criticisms about how the controls don't feel natural or how the game isn't bigger seem to miss the point entirely. I see this as a starting place. If this idea isn't revisited by this team or another, then I think that'll be a huge case of wasted potential. The dev team takes Snake Pass's core gameplay pretty far in these 15 levels, and yet there's still so much further it could go. A sequel or any number of games where you play as a long thing with no feet could show that. It feels like a lot of people don't like the game because it's different, but fellow context enjoyers such as myself will be able to see past that. Snake Pass is not the game that has practiced 10,000 ideas once, but the game that has practiced one idea 10,000 times. Not through flashy boss fights and cutscenes, but through exploration of the consequences of a protagonist in a 3D platformer who doesn't have feet and can't jump, Snake Pass is able to have moments. The level Roasted Ruin has you dropping off a ledge into a huge pool of water right next to this dilapidated fortress looking structure, which you'll then have to spin wheels, manoeuvre around narrow ledges and ride on bigger wheels to navigate. There's an even more arduous gauntlet at the end of a level in the previous world called Lazy Lagoon, which might I add is a very unfitting title, which tasks you with working your way up and around the side of a cliff face, and doing so has you suspended in near open air almost the whole time for pretty much the first time in the game, relying entirely on the skill you've developed with the control scheme up until now. This is probably the hardest part in the whole game if you're not going for the coins, which are these extra collectibles that throw some even more insane challenges at you. In the final world, the game gives you maybe its most outlandish little set piece yet, by having you ride the wind to clear a giant chasm, saving yourself only if you manage to wrap around some little wooden poles at the end. This is a moment presented so perilously only because you have no feet, no jump, no fallback. You have to just drop into the open air, guide Noodle the best you can, and let physics do the rest. As exciting as it is to consider where Snake Pass's concept could go, it's equally interesting to look back at where it likely came from. It's a serpentine struggle of Sisyphean proportions, an intentionally unintuitive game where physics and the average person's wonky understanding of it are put on glittering display. It's not supposed to feel comfortable at first, and I think it's trying to pull some humour and novelty factor out of that. Because of this, I think the closest comparisons I can make would be the works of Bennett Foddy. Getting Over It is similarly a game about climbing a mountain where failure is only ever a matter of falling down and losing ground, which is also the case in Snake Pass a lot of the time. But Quop stands out to me even more. I was gonna say at some point in this video, Quop walked so Snake Pass could run. But if you've played either of these games, you'd know how ridiculous a statement that would be. It would be more accurate to say Quop slowly and awkwardly collapsed and broke its own legs so that Snake Pass could slowly and awkwardly wrap itself around some wood that is far too plentiful on a mountain. That's the thing about ideas. No matter what you think of the quality of them, often all they have to be is different to have value. They're rarely ever going to be fine-tuned at first. That's why we develop them. If we don't develop them, we waste something with real promise. Not many people are willing to commit to something different. Something people won't see immediate value in. Even when developed, it's not going to please everyone. But if you stick to it, if you're able to realise how to maintain what makes that idea unique, whilst also tweaking it to have more universal appeal so that it can be seen by more people and thus appreciated by more, then you might just have something special on your hands. The people who like this stuff will really like it. I just hope that the people behind Snake Pass, or hell, any game designers, can see what might have been started here. Either way it goes, there's certainly something that any creative type might be able to learn from. Hell, I think I have already. Hey, as you can see, the Deview and thus this channel as a whole are going to be on a break for a while. I mean, I'm not going to come back with a different name, but I am a bit burnt out at the moment. I feel like I need a break. I have consistently made 2 videos a month every month since September of 2020 now, and when you're writing and editing and conceptualizing every single one, especially when, you know, the kinds of videos you do are quite a creative endeavour, eventually it wears you down a bit. I'm doing fine. I have some great ideas for when I come back, as I've just alluded to, but I want to take the time to recharge and refresh so that I can let these ideas marinate and come back better than ever when I do. That's not to say I'll be completely silent. There will be some stuff going up on the recently announced second channel, Extra Fudj, including possibly E3 reactions? Who knows? I'd recommend you go give it a little look anyway, but I might be biased. While you're there, take a nice gander at my gorgeous patchwork friends at the relevant links in the description, and all the lovely names of my generous, perfect, high-tier patrons. Cheesy Chip, Mike Archer, Mike Craig, Captain L, Good Chicken, Chris Monk, Flashing Fire, Tale of the Toaster, Waldington, Justin Mills, Heist Van Duren, Garm, Super, Isaac Vermeer, Charnucky, The Ghost of Karl Marx in 4D, Isaac Beardswood, Isaac, GP, Swagboy, Dixie Normus, Kavan Green, Elliot Joyce, Raven, Will Gone, The Great Fantus, and Fuad Lahoud. He told me to try and pronounce it even if I don't know how to, so yeah, sorry, not sorry, I guess. But also thank you for your support. And I'll see you again later on down the road with something that I'm very excited to fine-tune, as it were. It should be very good. But don't get used to hearing me say that word.